As many North Texans return from home from spring break, they likely face longer lines than usual at the airport security checkpoints, where TSA officers aren't getting paid and in some cases have quit their jobs altogether. It comes as the shutdown becomes the second longest in history with no end in sight. Senator John Cornyn, now fighting for his political life against Attorney General Ken Paxton in the Senate GOP primary runoff in late May, made some news last week. It came during a heated exchange with Democratic Congressman Greg Casar of Austin outside that city's airport. They argued about TSA employees not getting paid and the 4 recent incidents, some of them deadly, being investigated as terror attacks.
Not acceptable to fund just the TSA.
How about all the terrorist attacks like we see down on 6th Street? We want those to continue. The people are keeping us safe. Tell the Democrats to vote for funding the DHS.
A bill by Cornyn just passed the Senate that will end special treatment for members of Congress who have been allowed to bypass the TSA security checkpoints at airports. The measure now goes to the House. Cornyn and Paxton remain on the ballot after neither of them withdrew last Tuesday, the last day to do so. It comes as President Trump has said he will soon make an endorsement in the race. Cornyn last week was among the Republican senators pushing to pass the Save America Act, which would require proof of citizenship to register to vote in a federal election, in addition to showing ID. Cornyn criticized the Democrats for opposing the bill, which has become a focal point in his runoff with Paxton.
It will disenfranchise illegal aliens. It will disenfranchise non-citizens. That's the point. And they don't want to do that? Well, again, you have to wonder why. Is that because they want non-citizens, illegal immigrants, to be able to vote?
Republican Congressman Brandon Gill of Flower Mound says the Save America Act is one of the most important bills. We discuss that and his support for the war against Iran.
I support what the president's been doing here. The president was very clear. We do not believe that Iran should have nuclear capabilities. We took out their nuclear program last summer. But what didn't change, even though we took out the program, was the policy in Iran. The Iranian government still sought to create nuclear weapons. That is intolerable for the United States. At the same time, they were building up a large, short-range domestic ballistic missile program, which, combined with their naval assets, makes them a serious threat to American interests in the region. The president was very clear with them. This is intolerable. Gave them multiple off-ramps to wind down that program, to wind down the nuclear program. At one point, we even offered to give them free energy for quite some time. They said no. This, by the way, as we all know, is the leading state sponsor of terrorism, somebody who has destabilized not only the Middle East as a region, but the entire globe by funding terrorist proxies who are working against the United States all over the country.
I know President Trump had campaigned against forever wars. I know it's only 2.5 weeks into this. But how do you think it should be balanced between not having a long, drawn-out war versus, finishing the job that you started?
Yeah, this is not a forever war. That's not the intention here, and that's not what's going to happen. I agree. We shouldn't have forever wars. We shouldn't be going into backward parts of the globe like Afghanistan and pretending that we can create modern liberal-style democracy there. That doesn't make any sense. It didn't make any sense whenever we tried to do it 20 years ago. What we're doing here is simply saying that we are not going to allow you to create a military presence that destabilizes the globe. So this is not a forever war. It is a clear and narrow strategic interest that the United States is pursuing militarily.
Let's talk about the Save America Act. You have made a very it's part of your social media messaging that you don't think any bill should be passed until that Save America bill passes. Why is this so important to you, this issue, and that this bill passed?
To be clear, what my view is that the House should not vote on any Senate bill until the Senate passes the Save America Act. So I think that the House should send all kinds of bills to the Senate, whether it's on FISA or other pieces of legislation that are important. But we shouldn't be taking up Senate bills while they're holding up the Save America Act. And I think that's something that the vast majority of our voters, especially Republican voters, agree with. The Save America Act is the single most important piece of legislation we have in front of us right now. It is the bill that would stop illegal aliens from voting in American elections. This is particularly relevant, of course, after 4 years of open borders when between 15 and 20 million illegal aliens have poured into our country. Many Americans have a very reasonable suspicion that those illegal aliens, especially in blue states, which have lax voter ID laws and election integrity laws, are going to be voting. That's a problem that undermines confidence in our election systems. And it does raise, I think, very reasonable concerns about what it means to be a citizen and what it doesn't, and what kind of benefits that should entail. So again, this is the most important piece of legislation we have. It's something our voters care about far more than anything else. So I think that should be the key focus.
And what do you say to Democrats who say that this would place a burden on people for proving their citizenship if they don't have their birth certificate, or for women who have, obviously taken their husband's names, et cetera, and if they don't have a passport?
There are multiple ways to prove that you're an American citizen. You got a passport, you got a birth certificate, you got all kinds of different things that you can do. However, even if you can't get any of these variety of documents that could prove that, you can also get somebody else who would actually vouch for you. That's totally legal under this bill, who would vouch that you are in fact an American citizen. So the idea that this disenfranchises anybody is absolutely ludicrous. To the contrary, not passing a bill like the Save America Act disenfranchises American citizens, because every time an illegal alien votes in American elections, that undoes the vote of a legal American citizen who should be the only group of people who are voting. So what this bill does is effectively franchises the American people, gives us the voting power that we should have in our elections, as opposed to watering down our votes by allowing illegals to take part in our election system.
We also went one-on-one with Congresswoman Julie Johnson of Farmers Branch, who's in the Democratic primary runoff against former Congressman Colin Allred in the 33rd Congressional District. She discussed the war and the ongoing DHS shutdown.
We want to see a complete overhaul of what this agency is doing. We want them to target the violent criminals, for sure. But what they're doing and the way they are doing it is unacceptable. They're just picking up people who are just going to work, who are working in this economy, taking care of their family, with no active criminal threat or conviction.
And we've had, in the last couple of weeks, including in Austin, 4 attacks, incidents, some of them deadly, in which they are now being investigated as terrorist acts. And so how long should DHS be shut down while we have these incidents going on, unfortunately?
I know it's terrible what's happening. I hope that we can get together in DC and reach some solutions to be able to reopen the government and keep the people's business doing. We have a lot of important work with transportation, the Coast Guard, and other agencies that fall within DHS, as you imply. But at the end of the day, the way ICE was led under Kristi Noem, thank goodness she's gone. We'll see what the new head does, if they change their protocols, if they change their rules and their operating procedures, then that will be significant. If they keep business as usual, then I don't think Democrats are inclined to continue to fund it.
And so this will just keep going on and on?
We'll see, reforms need to be made.
I talked to Congressman Roger Williams last week, and he said ICE has been funded. So he said, you don't shut down a whole industry while you have disagreements, you work it out.
Well, you know what? You have to be able to work it out. And Republicans have been refusing and unwilling to negotiate with Democrats. The workout is not just do what we want, shut up and vote. That's not the workout. That's not how it happens.
And let me ask you about the Iran war. Where are you on this?
I think the war is illegal. I think it's, where are we going to stop? It's costing the U.S. government billions of dollars a day. And there's been no authorization from Congress. It's outrageous what is happening. We need to have a clear exit strategy. Right now, Trump just bombed another country with no clear plan, no clear plan of dissolution, no clear plan of how do we stop this. He's threatening boots on the ground. That's a war to me that requires Congress's involvement.
Back in when President Obama was in office, there was bombing of Libya, never went to Congress. And At the time, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, said wasn't necessary. So what's changed?
You know, I wasn't in Congress back then, so I can't speak to that. I'm in Congress now. And what I've been briefed on and what I understand, I think Congress should be involved. And I think Trump acted illegally.
What do you say to those who say, look, you're talking about this regime in Iran, and the White House has on its website a whole list of attacks that Americans, most of them U.S. military members, killed from April of 1983 through June of last year. And I counted it all up, and it was 992 Americans, again, mostly U.S. service members, but American civilians as well, who've been killed by either Iran or its proxies, all of them designated as U.S. terrorist organizations. What do you say to that?
Well, there's no doubt that Iran is an enemy of the United States, and Iran's government is horrific. It engages in gross human rights abuses and needs, a complete whole-scale restructuring of how that country functions. There's no disputing that at all. And Iran is a terrorist threat to Israel. It's a terrorist threat to the United States. It's a terrorist threat to many across the world. But there was no acute, immediate need for bombing that country at that time, from what I'm aware of, and that the Congress shouldn't have been involved, such that we couldn't have a deliberative process, such that we couldn't have a thoughtful strategy on what is our goal, what is our end game, what is our mission, and how does it end.
It's been reported, you tell me if you've heard otherwise, but it's been reported that the negotiators from Iran told the U.S. Negotiators that they were close to having 11 nuclear bombs.
Well, they cannot be allowed to have nuclear weapons. That is absolutely clear. Iran cannot be a nuclear power.
So if Iran can't be, then why isn't this war the right way to go about it?
Well, I think there's other ways to enforce, whether or not they're a nuclear power. I don't know exactly what the status of their nuclear armament was. I know that Trump bombed this country not too long ago and saying that he had dismantled their nuclear armorations. So, we'll have to see. I think a lot more information is required before we can really thoughtfully go there.